Chris Eymann joins me here today. In this episode, we're going to be focusing on wholesaling. So, if you are considering that strategy or working deep into that strategy, we're going to hit some highlights here. But you can find Chris on Instagram by going to Chris underscore Eymann, and that's going to be a clickable link in the show notes. But really appreciate your time here, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's always fun to talk to new people and in the investment world and definitely in mastermind networking. That's awesome.
Yeah, this is interesting because we are going to be talking quite a bit about wholesaling today, as that seems to be the low-hanging fruit for most people. They start in wholesaling, but I'd like your opinion. Is that where they should start?
Yeah, I think every guru says it's the low hanging fruit, right? You got to do your marketing, whether you're going to spend marketing on dollars and you actually have a marketing budget, or you just like you're that new and you don't even have a marketing budget and you're just going to spend your time, whether it's doing some door knocking or some cold calling, offers on MLS, whatever your strategy is. But yeah, that's the low hanging fruit. You get the property under contract and then you put it up on like a Facebook group, whatever, if you're in Oklahoma, it's Oklahoma Facebook group, or if you're in Phoenix, a Phoenix Facebook group. And okay, I got this property at,
So have you seen any kind of changes? I know you focus on Arizona and Florida, but has there been any changes regarding state legislation or anything that you needed to be aware of in
yeah,
those worlds? There's been a pretty big drastic one in mine.
yeah, it's changing. I don't know which state you're in, but South Carolina, you can't actually advertise the property until you own it. It's no longer the low hanging fruit in South Carolina. It's now you got to put a contract together and have a plan to close it, which people argue like if you look at the other side of the table for the homeowner, now they got somebody that's not going to back out on them on day 29 on a 30-day close, right?
One of our states is North Dakota, and you have to have a realtor's license now to wholesale.
Yeah, and that's big. That hit Chicago, I believe. I didn't know Pennsylvania just put it in, I wanna say 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. You have to have a license to wholesale a property.
Yeah.
And I know that Oregon is their legislation is in place, but it doesn't take effect till January 1. Once again, you can't advertise a property until you actually have.
So let's say somebody's listening to this show and they're thinking about doing this wholesaling concept for the first time. Where should they start?
If they're in a state that obviously needs licensing, then your first step would be your local real estate school, right? That's probably and real estate school isn't bad. It's get a lot of they don't teach you anything about marketing or anything like that, but they definitely teach you some language. It's like a history test. It's you learn all the vocabulary and all this stuff. They don't actually teach you the business, but they teach you the history and the background of it all and the ethics, right? But if you're
So
in one of those states, yeah, start with getting the license and then finding out what the rules are in your particular state.
yeah, I was want to spend a little time on the concept that when people get into this wholesaling, like you mentioned when we hit record, that a lot of the gurus say that this is the place to start because people can get into it, no money down. There's a lot of promises. Maybe even mention that it's mailbox money. Talk about the effort that might be involved in wholesaling. Is it as easy as some people might suggest?
Oh, so it's just like anything. I think once you get that first deal, I think that's like the drug, right? But that like on a cold calling, for instance, if you started cold calling today, a cold call conversion lead from first call to probably contract is 120 days, generally in our system. So if you were to start today and cold call, like nobody loves to cold call, right? But it's a lot of people start out that way. But if you had to take 120 days of cold calling to get that first check, that would be like a little bit of a bummer. Now, if you called on day 5 and got a contract and made 13 or $14,000, you'd be like, yeah, this is great. So it's a
Mhm.
little bit sooner when you decide to scale, you need to keep track of your numbers. Okay. If I send out this many mail pieces, I get the inbound calls, which are the hotter leads, and I can convert 1 out of 9 or 10 of those to contracts. As you start out, you're not going to have all that information. Definitely, like you're a solopreneur when you're just starting out, when you actually start to build a business and grow a business, it's just like anything. It's a business. You're an entrepreneur. What do they say? The entrepreneur fails 7 times, it's the one that gets up to 8 times that's successful.
Yeah. When somebody has thought about getting into wholesaling for the first time, and maybe I'm in a different part of the world, but they still mail out phone books in my area.
Oh, really?
And those people that still have landline phone numbers are typically the target you want to hit. If you're going to start with no money, I would point people to that as the first thing. Take that phone book and start making those cold calls, dialing down. That's your likely your target.
Yeah, so, like, in to that point, like, it's just a time thing, right? And if you schedule out your 2 hours a day to make your calls, let's just say you can make, round number, 50 to 75 calls an hour, but you do that for 2 hours a day. Now you've reached out to 100 to 150 people a day, right? That should statistically get you 2 prospects. We'll just call them prospects, but they're like you and Jack and I are having a conversation, but they're like, "Yeah, I'd consider selling for the right price. Maybe I'm selling 120, 150 days down the road," but they just didn't hang up on you and say, "Get lost." And then so now you have 2 prospects, and then you're gonna put it into a CRM where you're gonna keep track of that. And if it's your yellow pad that is your CRM and you're actually gonna use your yellow pad, then great. But you put it into your CRM and then you follow up with it's just like anything, it's sales, right? This is a sales game.
Yeah, I'd be curious. What would you suggest people say that first time they're making those phone calls?
So I've our my script basically reads like, "Hey, we're an investor. We just did a property in your neighborhood." And it might not have been in your neighborhood. It might have been we do quite a bit of properties, but that's our start. "Okay, we just did a property in your neighborhood. It just sold. We have some cash available. So we're looking for another property to purchase right now." So that's our starting point. Just
It usually takes over the conversation there. I've always found that if you feel like you're in the process of selling, you're probably on the wrong side of the conversation. You want it to be a conversation and get them to talk more.
100%. They if you can get them to like, why should I, for instance, if I'm limiting I have some cash available now, that doesn't mean I'm going to have cash available tomorrow. Why should I buy your property? And then, Jack, you start selling me your house. That's when you feel like now you're winning.
So I know your company has bought and sold like tens of thousands at this point of houses. Is that as you've scaled up to that level, what changes have you had to make?
I was actually a tech guy, got laid off in the tech downturn, got laid off. I don't know if some of you guys might know it's the
For those listening, that was a
that's my
catastrophe regarding the mic stand, so
Yeah, that was my mic. But yeah, so I got laid off twice in the tech downturn. Conference room call. "Hey, Chris, come to the conference room. Here's your check. We added 2 weeks on. Have a nice life." So that was the start of the real estate. I got laid off twice. What can I go? I thought I was selling my house, so I like, oh, let me go get my real estate license so I can save the ten to $12,000 in real estate commissions because I'm jobless and I need to save that money. So got into real estate, but actually entered into the foreclosure business. So I was a foreclosure guy, also became a hard money lender, was able to get a $100 million line of credit from Wells Fargo in 2005 as a hard money lender. I was borrowing at prime plus two, so 9%. Back in 2007, back in Phoenix in 2007, it was 18%. So we're getting 18%. Our cost of funds from Wells Fargo is 9. I'm making 9% on we had about $80 million out there. So you can see that doing pretty good. Then the financial crisis happened, right? So bank line gets called, foreclosures. Now all of a sudden I go from having this amazing business to just basically losing $4.5 million in '08. Had my struggles there. Back to the foreclosure boom with people buying houses. So I actually got the contract for Goldman, a company called Frio here in Arizona and Nevada. And I was just buying, I had their buy box, I was their buyer. And yeah, on one single day at the foreclosure steps, I bought them 27 houses.
wow, 27. There's a lot of information there. So you $100 million line of credit with Wells Fargo.
Yeah, Wells Fargo
You know,
Foothill.
a lot of gurus will say to start at that local bank level because you can't get any traction with these large banks. Like, how did you pull that off? Like,
We started doing hard money in 2003 and we were just selling it. We were just getting lines from wealthy individuals. And so we reached out to a guy that was in New York, obviously financial capital of the world, and said, "Hey, like, how do we get like a line of credit to this?" And they're like, I think we were at 10 to $15 million at the time. They're like, a bank's not even going to look at you until you can push around like $25 million. So once we got to around $25 million, then we made the call back and they're like, all right, let me see if I can make some introductions. Made some introductions. Obviously, he gets paid for doing the connecting. And then we started with a $25 million line of credit with Wells Fargo Foothill. That was in '03, late '03, early '04. And then we expanded it to the $100 million line. And then obviously, you know, it's great. But when you have a personal guarantee on $100 million and the financial crisis happens, it's bad pay.
so you mentioned losing 4.5 million in that situation. After that occurred, could you talk a little bit about the mindset and hurdles you had to go through to get back on the horse?
Yeah. So I had the 550 Mercedes and the brand new '07 Escalade. Not that I needed two cars because I can only drive one at a time. I literally dropped off the Escalade at GMC and they're like, I'm like, here you go. They're like, you're not late. I'm like, but I'm going to. Like, here's the car. I can't afford it anymore. Like, I'm volunteer. You don't have to come find my car. I'm just giving it to you. So yeah, it was tough to swallow. Friends and family, I owed $1.5 million to friends and family, and I'm like, "Hey guys, interest stops, but I will pay you back. I don't care if it takes 15 years. I'll pay every dollar back." But that's the best I can do. And then I went and bought a Toyota Camry, um, $30,000, had 127,000 miles on it, brown in color. Shocks didn't work very well, and I just started back again. That's it. It's just like I had 3 kids at the time. There's not a like when you have 3 kids, there's no option to fail. It's and I'd gotten laid off in the corporate world twice. So going back to the corporate world wasn't an option to me. Going to get a job wasn't like I can see what people they can just take your job away from you at a moment's notice and you're out the door. And that was 2 of those was enough to say, I'm not working for somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. No, I hooked my wagons to the right people and I networked. The power of truly networking and shaking somebody's hands and meeting them. Like we've met online, but when you sit down and have a coffee meeting with somebody, I feel like you're 10 times better off at doing a deal with them or making a connection. And that's why I'd mentioned before we got on that I run a local RIA in Phoenix area because I feel like even if I've just shaken your hand one time, I have a better chance at doing business.
Just to remind everybody, you can find Chris on Instagram. Look for Chris_Eymann. That's going to be a clickable link in the show notes. If you found some value in what we're talking about so far, do us a quick favor and share this episode with one of your investor friends. And if you're watching us on YouTube or Rumble, give us a quick and subscribe. So, Chris, you mentioned now you're coming out of this and you buy, what was it, 27 properties in a single auction?
Yeah, so that was the best thing, keeping your name good, like not violent bankruptcy, not having people talk around town. Oh, that guy just left everybody high and dry. I was able to like the foreclosures really started to pick up and I was a foreclosure guy. So I'm like, all right, I know how to do this. And so everybody wanted to invest. I want to buy the cheap houses, obviously. I just started back at the foreclosure sales. Those guys that actually lent me the money to get me to that $25 million level. And they're like, they were investing in the housing market in 2006. We were just at dinner one night and they're like, yeah, we stopped investing in the housing market. I'm like, you've had millions and millions of dollars invested in the housing market. Why would you stop? I don't understand that. They were smarter than me, obviously. So I knocked back on their door and I'm like, hey, I want to go back to wholesaling at the foreclosure steps. But obviously, they got beat up pretty good. But they're like, all right, yeah, we'll give you money. We just want half of whatever you make. But at that particular time, that's the only choice I had. because I had a good reputation, I was still quote unquote bankable with these guys. And they're like, yeah, you got as much money as you need. So I started buying deals at the courthouse again, wholesaling. I entered business with my sister and my brother-in-law at about this step. They were doing some fix and flipping in Las Vegas, and they're like, Las Vegas isn't a great place to raise a family. They were having similar struggles in real estate in '07. They moved here and we started a wholesale business. I got a call one day from this guy. His name's Jeff. He's like, hey, I just got a contract with the fund. I would like you to buy me some houses. Great. Let's have lunch. Next thing you know, I'm like, here's my buy box. Like, how many houses do you want me to buy? As many as you can buy that fit in this box, you know?
This is yet another mindset thing that I think people need to work through. You mentioned when you're getting back into the game, those people that you approached regarding investing again. First of all, I would imagine that was you probably didn't think that they were going to jump in because they knew your history at this point, that you were likely struggling,
Yeah.
but likely your openness about it and what was going on, it's amazing what people will do and the hand that they will stretch out to help somebody along. I know they're asking for half, but that's another mindset thing to get through because a lot of people, they won't take that option when that may be the only thing they have, and I keep half a watermelon is better than nothing.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. No, I had no money, and you can't just go to the foreclosure sales. You got to bid today and pay tomorrow. If you don't have money, you're not in the game. So like without those guys, I didn't have a choice, but now I'm in the game again. And I had millions of dollars at my disposal. So that definitely helped. And then actually, when I got the contract with the fund, it wasn't even a contract. It's here's the buy box. We will pay you $1,500 a house. We're not giving you the spread. We're giving you $1,500 in acquisition. And if you miss on the buy box, you keep the house. It's a fund. You can't, there's no title insurance and trustee sale. So it was like, hey, and that's where those guys came in that had the money. It was like, hey, bid on the house in the buy box today. You pay for it tomorrow. And then when we were using Fidelity Title, when Fidelity Title has completely cleaned the title and said, hey, yes, it's good, dolls, which could be 3, 5, 10 business days, then they sent me the money for the house and the $1,500. So I needed those guys the houses were cheap at the time. It was 50, 60, 70 grand that we were buying, but I needed the 50 grand to get the 51,500 5 days later. But I needed it the next day to get, and you're like, that's a lot of risk for 1,500 bucks. But when you're doing 20 a day, it's pretty good
It
business.
adds up. Yeah, it adds up pretty good. I was gonna say, what was your margin on that 1,500? Were you spending about a third of it just finding the property?
No, so we would just we do all our trustee sale research. We had two drivers besides the principals, me and my sister and brother-in-law. I mean, had five people like in Phoenix, Arizona. Like this was like ground zero for foreclosures, or at least one of the states for ground zero. We would have 300 to 400 houses foreclose a day. Like it was
Yeah, wow.
so.
It was probably you there was just so much that you couldn't get to it all.
Yeah, no, yeah. We were literally just concentrating on buying. We're like, but hey, you got a fund. The cost of the homes to build, even at a 2,000 square foot home built in the 2000s, that at least cost 80,000 to build. So like to reproduce the house with the dirt and everything is 200 grand. You're buying it for 70,000, $80,000. Right.
Right.
So,
Those people that are looking to get involved in business with a relative, what type of advice would you have for them?
so my sister is my Irish twin. We've been close our whole lives, but obviously you have disagreements and any level of friendship, whether it's family, a good friend. You just have to have a mindset. You're dealing with people, whether business partners. I don't know how many people in real estate you've seen that are partners and then the partnership breaks up. I tell people or they hire the acquisition guy and they think it's the best acquisition guy on the planet. And then 2 years later, the acquisition guy is going, I just tell her it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. But she is family, so I can't get rid of her. Like we're together. Like there is no choice. So I guess that's probably we're blood, so we can't. There's no option to go our separate ways. And since '07, like 17 years in business, have we had 5 or 6 fights that probably we didn't talk for a week? Sure.
What were some of those fights about?
Just just how you wanna run the business, how I wanna run the business, communication difficulties. Like, I think communication is obviously, you know, I'm 53 now. I've obviously learned a lot in my real estate career, and obviously probably the number one thing, whether it's your business partner, your marriage, your kids, is communication, right? And that's just if you don't like and some people are just scared of communication, like they don't like the uncomfortable feeling of bringing something up. And so not bringing it up and pushing it down and all that is definitely then it just festers and that's a poor way to do things.
Mhm. Yeah, and usually in the situation is your imagination is way worse than just having the conversation.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Your mind starts spinning. I've been through some little bit of marriage counseling too. It's you start doing this in your mind with what's going on in your marriage. You're like, why not just talk, right? And just have a conversation.
Mhm. Yeah. It this goes back to I've been listening to Chris Voss again, but I was listening to he co-wrote a book for realtors, and there was some of that where you're essentially asking permission to break some bad news, to reset that part of the conversation. That's the thing here is that again, your a person's imagination will just run wild.
Yeah.
So, Chris, this has been a fantastic conversation. Before we jump into closing out this episode, is there a question or concept you wish we would have covered so far?
No, I don't know. I think everybody talks about getting into wholesale. Obviously, the legislation is a big piece of that. So obviously look at for instance, Arizona, I used the Phoenix RIA platform like a neutral platform and my connection with Fidelity Title. I actually have on September 10th in my market, I have the head of the Department of Real Estate. I invited her out saying, why don't you just tell us your agenda on where you think wholesaling is going? And if you have any agenda to put any legislation on or make us all get licensed or you make us use a universal contract or let's just find out. And if tell us what you want us to do, then I'll follow the rules. Like I've been a wholesaler for 24 years. Like I'm here in the business. I've been in the business a long time. I'd like to just do it the way you think it should be done so that I don't have any knocks on any doors from, you know, government agencies. It's the worst thing. But yeah, just take action. People are gonna fail. It's just and it's all just learning how to solve problems. If you can just learn how to solve the problem, for instance, the legislation. All right, you have the legislation coming out. So what's the workaround for that?
It seems like you've designed your business to flex into whatever you might need, whether
Yeah,
it's the hard money lending, the wholesaling, the fix and flipping, whatever you might need at that particular moment. You seem to be able to ebb and flow
yeah.
based
And it
on the environment.
and then even watching, we saw the 10-year bond drop and interest rates drop 3/4 of a point in the last 30 days. So that should bring buyers back to the market, which should generate. But then you're also in a spot where it's fall, which is typically not a time where people buy houses. People are going back to school and so you got this little weird dilemma. But if interest rates drop more because they've been in the sixes and sevens and touched eight for a minute, if they drop back into the fives, people that have wanted to get off the fence because they're sitting on a 3.5, a 3 or a 4 might actually get off the fence and actually do something. Understanding the economics of just the real estate business is obviously pretty helpful as well.
Yeah, some of those bonds that you're talking about, that those price changes, that's not like common knowledge to the average buyer. And then now there's rumblings that the Fed is going to drop 50 points
Yeah.
in one fell swoop. When you get that in the news cycle, that's when I think we're going to see some
Yeah.
activity.
So what, like you said, once it goes into the news cycle, then it becomes mainstream. People start to get excited and all that kind of stuff. And then it creates momentum, right?
Chris, just remind everybody one more time, Instagram, look for Chris_Eymann. That's going to be a clickable link in the show notes. But if you're ready, Chris, we will close out this episode with some rapid fire.
Yeah, let's go.
What is one lie real estate investors tell themselves?
One lie that real estate The one lie they tell is they don't actually take the time to go through the budget. Like the fix and flippers, they like, "Oh, this is a $30,000 remodel." That's a lie because if you actually take the time to go through the budget, it's more than 30, but you just like, "Oh, it's 30,000."
If you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Negotiate out the personal guarantee.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah.
Do you have a book recommendation or what are you reading right now?
What is it? I just Buy Back Your Time. I just met Dan. I don't know if you've heard of the book. I don't know Dan's last name, but it's about buying back your time and basically scheduling what do you really need to do? What is a task that you do, but do it because you think you're good at it and you're not willing to give it off to somebody else.
Hmm.
But it's really about just, we all think that we're number one at doing everything, but there's some items in our days that we can push off to a virtual assistant or push off to an executive assistant that would actually, as entrepreneurs and owners of our business, give us more time. And then when I saw his presentation, he's once you start pushing off the time, the last step is to fill your time and actually go do more CEO type of stuff and not just push off your time so you have a 10-hour work week, but to actually take the CEO part of your business and fill it and do that, with coaching your staff and all that stuff. I thought
So
it was,
what single strategy, process, or tool have you implemented that has had the biggest time saving impact to you and your business?
I had to go direct to seller because everybody has equity and foreclosures slowed way down. But having a CRM that has the reminders, has the auto texting, has the mail follow up, having that is such a crucial piece of your business that, and having all those systems in place, it's invaluable.
And that's going to lead me to everybody checking out realdealcrm.com for that information and how we can help you with that. Chris, I really appreciate your time. This was fantastic. I hope you'll consider coming back again sometime.
Yeah, anytime, just to shoot me up the Real Deal CRM. Hey, I'll check it out for sure. You meet people, get some information. It's just part of learning and growing, and it's fun.
I appreciate it, Chris. And until next time, you can find Chris at Chris_Eymann, and that's going to be clickable link in the show notes. Thanks again, Chris.